Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with Weekly Weiss for September 9th, 2022. We've actually had a surprising amount of news this week, and some from a little earlier that I had forgotten to mention in previous videos. But starting off, we've of course got the Bushiroad Championship Series 2022. We've had a couple more regionals, as well as some other news updates regarding it that I can share with you guys. Second, we have the Title Cups coming to English. This is something Japan's had for a while that we've never really gotten in English. Those are coming. This was announced right around the time I posted last week's video, so I've got some information on that for everyone. And as well, we've had some product announcements this week. Not necessarily new product, but some reprints that I think will get a lot of people really excited. So starting off with the BCS 2022, the first big thing is that we have a location and date for the World Finals. This is something we've had for a little while that I just completely forgot to mention last week. It's going to be Los Angeles, California, January 28th, 2023. So unfortunately, no Tokyo for Worlds this year. But I think that was pretty much expected, especially with them having held off on announcing the location for so long. I think it was pretty clear that travel to Japan was just not going to be something feasibly arrangeable this year. So it really came down to either Los Angeles or Singapore, and it seems that they've chosen Los Angeles, which is mildly unfortunate for people who can't get travel visas to the US in time. Singapore, from what I understand, is a little more lenient on that, and that might have been, while not as cost-effective, maybe, for most people, more feasible for actually getting some of the sponsored trips to travel. Oh well, not much we can do about that. But yeah, Los Angeles, January 28th, so super excited about that. This is pretty much the first time Worlds has been held outside of Japan, as far as I can tell. So that'll be nice and interesting. Not as exciting of a place to explore, but, you know, hopefully we'll get to see everyone there and have a good time. As far as regionals go, we've had Taipei City, Taiwan was last weekend on the 3rd. And it's Taiwan. As I don't know anyone there. It seems that most other people don't know anyone there. So we've been unable to get exact lists for a lot of the tops from that event. We do have the deck log for the first place list, which you can go check out on Weiss Tea Time. But as far as the other 7 lists, we know what series they were. We don't know what builds they were. From what I have heard, at least one of the Tokyo Revengers was the blue 8-gate build, and at least one was an 8-choice build. Don't know anything more than that, but it is kind of crazy to see 4 Tokyo Revengers taking 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and one of the top 8 spots. Very unexpected. I believe this regional was around 30 participants, so not huge, but still for 4 Tokyo Revengers to take that high of a placement is very surprising. Beaufry is also an interesting top 8 spot. It makes sense. Beaufry has always sort of had its strength in answering board-based decks, and if the meta right now is decks like Kanata Marine, or 8 Standby Mushoku, or whatever like that, then Beaufry is probably going to tear through them. Worth noting, even though this is after the legality period for Quintessential Quintuplets 2, it was not legal for this tournament due to licensing restrictions, so both of the Quintessential Quintuplets decks that topped should have only consisted of set 1 cards. So if I had to guess, they're probably treasure choice builds, or you know, maybe they're Itsuki waifu sort of decks playing 8 comeback with that finisher. Obviously that deck gets a lot better with set 2, but I'm trying to think of viable set 1 builds that could compete in a meta. But yeah, so hopefully at some point we'll get more information on these lists, but for now, series are all we have for most of them. And the other regional we had on September 4th was Duluth, Georgia in the US. And this one This looks more like the meta we'd expect, with a couple of standout decks there. Obviously, Quintessential Quintuplets 2 out and now legal, so 8 standby Nino deck is has moved to the top of the meta. Maybe not the best deck in the format, but definitely one of what I assume people would pick as like the 3 or 4 best decks in the meta. And it showed a strong showing here with 3 top 8 spots, including first and fourth. It also made up a lot of the room. I was there, and everywhere you looked was just like quintuplets or Hololive, with a good bit of Danmachi as well. We do see 2 Kanata Hololive decks, slightly different builds. Second place, just utilizing the typical like Miko level 1 game. That was actually me. Yay, I did it. I qualified for Worlds. But the top 8 build was playing Okayu level 1 combo, which was really cool. Playing 4 of the Okayu Climax, 3 Kanata, and 1 Marine Climax. And I assume, like, thinking about it, this is actually a really cool way to build the deck. Especially if you're looking at a lot of people, like, expecting Kanata Marine and building around beating it. In my experience, you know, like, almost every quintuplets player I played against, like, rickied for their clock kick assist almost immediately to start answering my on-death effects. And then decks like Danmachi are playing the bottom deck bomb. Decks like Fate can just answer, like, everything you put on the board. So, the biggest downside of Kanata Marine being its reliance on on-death effects. There are a lot of decks that can play around that, and adding an actual level 1 combo to the deck, as opposed to going heavier on the level 3, gives you more consistent card advantage to be able to set up your Kanata loop at level 2. So it's a very, very interesting way to build the deck that I'm actually probably going to play around with some in the future. So really cool to see that. Danmachi was the undefeated in Swiss. Pretty much just shredded like all the big board-based decks as expected. 8 choice Slime also taking a top 8 spot. Not the first time we've seen that this season. Or I guess this season it is, but in BRO, 8 choice Slime had some topping spots. So it does seem to be the favored build of Slime, still sneaking in here and there. And third place being Standby Choice Adventure Time is probably the real shocker from this event. It's a deck that obviously when it came out, everyone was super hype on and was like, oh, Adventure Time, like, this is really good English original. This is, like, strong set. Really powerful finisher. And then it just kind of never really did anything. So now it's here. It's done it. It's gotten third. It's qualified for Worlds. So, not very... Well, I guess COVID. I mean, we didn't have Worlds, but last time we saw an English original qualify for Worlds was Cardcaptor Sakura. So cool to see an English original deck at a pretty good standing in the meta. It makes sense, once again, playing against all these, like, standby meta decks right now, with the Demon Bloodsword being able to bounce 2 characters can really hurt a lot of decks that don't want to just be, like, hard playing their 2/2s back down, or their 3/2s that don't have on-play effects. So, really powerful deck. Excited to see what kind of things will be taking top 8s in the future. I expect it to be mostly a lot of the same, quintuplets, Hololive, Danmachi, etc. But with some of these decks like Slime and Adventure Time sneaking in, it's still exciting to see what other things people are going to come up with to contest these top decks. Looking at the top decks though, one big question, where the hell did Mushoku go? No Mushoku in either top 8. I don't actually know if Taiwan had a licensing issue with it, but I know for a fact that Duluth did not. Yet despite this fact, and despite the fact that it's been like one of the top decks since it came out, I only saw 1 in the entire room. There could have been more. We've only accounted on a spreadsheet for about 65 to 70% of the players in the room, as far as knowing what deck they were on for sure. But out of that 65 to 70%, I believe we have only gotten 1 single Mushoku. And I have no idea why. I think this deck is still... Like, I mean, some people are like, oh, well, all the 8 standby Mushoku players jumped on 8 standby Quints when it came out. But I think Mushoku is still, like, very well positioned in the meta, especially against quintuplets. Because your 1/1s are still the biggest one. You still have the biggest 1/1s on offense and defense, pretty much, out of any deck. So if Quince is going heavy on the blue 1/1 that can't be reversed by cost zeros, then your 1/1s being able to reverse that puts you in a really good spot against quintuplets. Your 1/1s are big enough to contest their 2/2s on offense, not on defense. But also, if you standby out your finisher Ghislaine early, Quince can't play counters, so you stop their minus soul counter, you stop their anti-change counters, which is just a lot of really strong stuff against them. So I'm not really sure why this deck went away. It obviously still has rest counter as well. Don't know. Maybe we'll see some more in the future. Maybe people in Georgia just don't like Mushoku anymore. I don't know. But it has been pretty much replaced by the new release, Quintessential Quintuplets. It's an 8 standby deck. It's a 12 standby deck, actually, similar to Tokyo Revengers. This level 3 Nino gains standby trigger if her climax is in your climax area. So one of the big strategies that sets this deck apart is their ability at level 2. Once they hit a small deck, they can play a level 0 that shuffles 2 cards back in to shuffle a bunch of these level 3 Ninos back in, play the climax, trigger the Ninos so you get standby effects without actually having to put climaxes in your stock, and build a really strong board that way. Their finisher is about on par with most of the other standby finishers right now. It's just a pay cost, do a single instance of burn. This one burns 3, which is slightly better than the other, like the burn 2 in Mushoku. It heals, but it's small on defense. It's one of the downsides of this deck is a lot of their standby targets are small on defense. So they are relying on being able to get sort of the wombo combo hit 3 standbys in a turn to get like globals and assists onto the board in order to contest on power defensively. But in exchange, all their characters get like really high burst power on offense. So overall, still a super strong standby deck. Obviously, we saw it get 3 of the top 8 spots in Duluth. So yeah, that's moved into our lineup of top decks along with the ones I covered last week. Looking to the future, we have upcoming regionals. Nothing this weekend, but next weekend we do have 2. We have Rosemont and Osnabrück, so we'll have to see what happens at those. There won't be anything else in the AO region for a while. I think some of these ones on the AO regionals still don't have what games they're doing listed. I think only 2 of the ones on this list actually are confirmed to have Weiss, and the ones that I've blacked out completely are confirmed to not have Weiss. So it might be a while before we get any more AO regionals, but every NALA and Europe regional has Weiss, so we'll be looking at pretty much the next few weekends. Nothing this weekend, 2 regionals on the 17th and 18th, 1 on the 24th and 25th, 1 the following weekend, 1 the following weekend, then we'll have a break, then 2, and it looks like another break, and then 2, and then pretty much 1 most weekends moving forward, at least 1. So we'll definitely have a solid stream of top 8 decks to look at to continue analyzing the meta as we progress forward. Now, looking at Title Cup. So Title Cup is something Japan has had for quite a while. It's basically a tournament where you can only play one specific series. They tend to do these at their regionals as side events, and they'll have about like 8 to 10 different Title Cups occur at the regional for pretty much the 8 to 10 series that have most recently gotten support. So sometimes it'll be like, oh, you know, the 18th Sword Art set came out, so we're doing a Sword Art Title Cup, and you'll see a lot of variation in decks. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, new title came out, Maid Dragon, right? Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. That's only 1 set, so cool to like figure out who can game the rest of the Maid Dragon meta with their build. These are fun events. They really challenge you to think creatively about how you're building your deck, because you're not trying to beat the actual meta. You're trying to beat everyone else that is also constrained to the same like 120 cards that you are to build from. So it's a really interesting format, can lead to some really cool deck builds. I'm excited to see these in English. These are not coming to our regional level, though. For now, at least, they are at the shop level, which is going to make them probably a little hard to get enough competitors for some of the smaller stores out there, and especially for less popular series. I can imagine ones like Hololive and Quintessential Quintuplets aren't going to have any trouble getting a notable number of participants just because of the popularity of their series. But speaking of Quintessential Quintuplets, that is going to be the first one we've had announced. They say they're doing it for every title, or every new release moving forward from Quintessential Quintuplets. As far as prize structure goes, everyone that participates is going to get one copy of the actual Weiss card promo for the event. So that's going to be, in Quint's case, the 3-2 here. And then the winner of the event will get 3 more copies of that promo to finish their playset, and they'll also get the winner's award, which is pretty much just a cool novelty thing to show that you won your title cup, that you can, use as a center marker or whatever else you want. So neat stuff, nothing like super high value online. It is nice to try to win to get your playset of the actual card promo, because that will pretty much be the only way you're going to be able to get these. So these will be harder to come across than normal like weekly shop promos if they end up being like important cards. But really excited to see what kind of promos we get for these in the future. This does mean that once Attack on Titan final season releases, we'll probably get Title Cup for it, which means more new English original promo. So excited to see what kind of card that's going to be as well. Next, we have some product announcements. The big thing is the reprints of the Hololive and Kaguya-sama Love is War trial decks. We have set 2 coming out for each of these very soon, probably around January-February range. So since set 2s don't have trial decks typically, and these don't, we're getting the set 1 trial decks reprinted alongside them. These are both very popular titles. They're going to be probably big sellers that get a lot of people in. Both of these set 1s released basically right before the big popularity boom. Kaguya-sama like kind of right on the border of it. So they were both sets that were a bit hard to get, especially on the trial deck side if you weren't already in the game before the huge popularity surge. So bringing the trial decks back with set 2 is going to be really helpful for new players jumping in. They are going to have silver signatures, just like the Slime and Overlord reprints, which we've already gotten the Slime reprint, still waiting on the Overlord one. Personal speculation is that they're just holding it off until they announce Overlord set 2 for English, since that should be relatively soon. But yeah, silver signatures to set them apart. But, if you're looking at maxing the deck for either of these, like, now is a pretty good time to pick these up, because even if they're the silver signatures, they look really good in person. And they're still really shiny and cool. So, very helpful. Glad to see these getting reprinted. I think that reprinting trial decks alongside new support sets is a pretty good precedent to set. Thinking back, it especially would have been helpful for like Heaven's Feel or Heaven's Feel 2. Like, neither of those had trial decks, so even if the old Fate ones like weren't very good, giving players something to jump in on would have been nice, maybe. Sets like that. So hopefully we'll see this with a couple other sets in the future. And the last product announcement, sort of related thing, is some of you may have noticed that the Hololive promos given out back in April, the drop searchers had different traits printed on some of them. Apologies for the low quality picture here, but you can see that these cronies one has Hololive English as its second trait, and one has Holo EN Council. There was apparently a wrong print run that happened somewhere, that some of these promos got sent out with the wrong trait. Starting from regionals on the weekend of the 17th, so starting with Rosemont, Illinois, you will be able to exchange the incorrect ones, so it's going to be ones that have Hololive English or Hololive Indonesia as their trait, for the correct trait. These are all being errataed to Only the correct one is the one that has their specific generation name, not their branch. So they'll have Holo EN Myth, or Holo EN Council, or Holo ID Gen 1, etc. So you can exchange those at regionals coming up. I assume the whole reason they didn't say anything about these earlier is because they were waiting to actually be able to print replacements. But yeah, so if you have the wrong ones and want to get them changed out, now's your chance. As far as I'm aware, it's only the non-foils that have this issue. They say they're doing the exchange for foils and non-foils, but I have yet to see a foil with the error, so I think it's just the non-foils there. And this has been a bit of a long one, but thank you all for watching. You can find me at BoatsDon'tSink on Twitter. You can find our store at Iron City Games on Facebook, or ironcitygames.tcgplayerpro.com, where you can get singles, sealed product, playsets, and more. Go check us out. We really appreciate it. And I will see you all next time.